All right, guys, and welcome to the Welsh Sports Podcast. Today, I'm joined by a special guest, the first ever guest I've had on the channel. I'm really buzzing for this one. He's the OG of rugby highlights, and that is Andrew Forde. Andrew, how are you, mate?
I'm very good, thank you. Thank you for having me on, Christian. Really appreciate it, mate.
Yeah, that's okay. Really appreciate you coming on. Before we get into the weekend's results, I just want to thank you for coming on because I've been a massive fan. I've literally followed your channel for about 4 or 5 years. I think like the Mike Phillips one was one of the first ones I watched, so more or less since then. But how long have you been doing it for?
If you look at my channel, I've actually got videos from like 2010 on there, and even like rugby videos. But like I was so young there, they're pretty crap. But like I kind of consider that I've been doing it since about 2017 was kind of when I kicked it all off.
Yeah. How did you like sort of get into it? Did you just upload a random video or?
It was around the time when Alex Cuthbert was getting a bit of flack by Wales fans, so I did like a Cuthbert video, just like a normal highlights video, and it got decent traction. Wales Online did an article from it, and
Oh,
I
really?
was kind of like, yeah, I was kind of buzzing about that. I was in school at the time as well, so I think I'd like just finished a maths lesson. One of the boys was like, "Oh, you're in Wales Online," and I was like, "Oh, it's class." And then
What?
just all the boys, my family were just like, "Oh, you should carry on doing it." And then yeah, it just kind of started from there. It was a bit more casual back then, but a bit more serious now.
Yeah, it's impressive how quickly you get the videos out. Like, how do you sort of keep like files on everyone, and then as you get enough, you put a video out, or do you think like I'm gonna make this video and then go and find the videos?
Yeah, it's a combination of everything. Someone asked me this yesterday. I saw like someone on Twitter said a few weeks ago they reckon I have like this massive Excel spreadsheet with like codes of everything. It's not as complex as that, but like certain players, like if I know they've had a good season or they're like going to be the next big thing, like an international, I'll maybe like make some notes. But a lot of the players, it's literally just once I know I'm going to do a video on them, I just like write notes, go on stuff like Twitter, obviously watch the games that they're playing in, like when I know that I'm going to be making a video, and then like kind of make notes while watching it. But it's not as kind of glamorous as people think it is. There's no like codes or anything like that. It's literally just handwritten notes as I'm like watching a game. And I tend to do like end of year videos, which like the best tackles, for example. And that will be like I'll literally be down the Arms Park and like I'll see a good tackle and like just look up at the clock, just write a quick note. And then half the time it's really badly written. Like I'll go good tackle,
Yeah, like scribbles.
32-40. But and then I'm like looking at it. It wasn't like the same time in the actual game feed, so like I'm having to look like a few minutes around there. But yeah, that's
Yeah.
essentially my process in terms of making the videos.
So you always like when you're watching a game, I found since I've been doing this, when I'm watching a game, I'm always like, especially Wales, thinking about like, should I be making a note of this or like, should I just be taking the game in or you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a difficult balance as well. When it's like a team you support, you kind of want to sit there and enjoy the game, but you don't want to kind of miss something like big. Like if there's something like really significant, but that's like the luxury of stuff like Twitter is stuff just come up straight away, and
Yeah,
like they're like
exactly.
bookmarked there then, so you know you can come back to it.
Yeah, yeah. Nice. So it sounds like you got the process down and your Instagram content has really stepped up the last couple of months.
Yeah, no, cheers, mate. I've kind of been putting a bit more effort into that. It's kind of mad the reach you can have on stuff like that. But yeah, no, I
Yeah,
enjoy it. I
yeah.
enjoy it a lot.
Yeah. Well, keep doing what you're doing because it's good stuff. So I'll get into the rugby. Um, so you went down on Friday, did you? You're a Cardiff fan for anyone who doesn't know.
I think if anyone saw my Twitter or anything, they'd probably work out quite quickly. I'm a bit of a biased Cardiff fan.
Yeah, same.
Good choice.
Did you get down there on Friday or?
Yeah, yeah. It, I thought it was a bit of a disappointing game in terms of I didn't think I'd complain about a bonus point win, but I thought Zebra were really poor. So
Yeah, I agree.
I didn't think we were much better. But bonus point win at the end of the day, we drew to them last year. So
Yeah, I felt exactly the same as you, to be honest. I thought they were so bad that we sort of, I don't know, we just made them look like they were even in the game, which they weren't really. And I feel we sort of left quite a lot out there. But in hindsight, like we had so many games where we came close last year and we should have won no matter how well we played. So bonus point win, I'm just going to take it, you know.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think like saw kind of a lot of people complaining on various social medias about kind of our strategy, and I agree with it. But I think I'd rather us win ugly than lose playing sexy rugby. Like obviously there's a middle ground at a certain point, but to get a bonus point out of that, you can't complain too much, can you?
Exactly. Is anyone stood out for you when you were watching?
I thought Sheedy was great, but I think it's quite concerning about the fact he missed 3 conversions. That I think that's something that's got to be kind of looked at, and I do wonder whether Ben Thomas should maybe be given the kicking boots if he's playing at 12 because
Yeah,
he's
I
got a
agree with
massive
that.
boot on him. But I thought like there was some good standout performances. I thought Dan Thomas was really good. I thought
Yeah,
both of them just consistently put in a solid shift. Um, and I don't think anyone like played horrifically badly.
yeah,
I'm not sure if the Ben Donald at 8 experiment completely worked, but again, if there's a game
yeah.
that you can try it in, it probably is a game like that, Zebra at home. What about you? Any other
Yeah.
players stood out?
Yeah, no, I agree with you about the Donald thing. I didn't really understand it because Botham's played quite a lot in that position and Donald's predominantly played at 6. So unless he was just trying to like build squad depth and like you said, he felt that was the game he could do it. But I actually thought Aled Davis was man of the match. I know Sheedy sort of grabbed the headlines and the 2 kicks that ended up scoring tries from were just quality. But I just thought the way he controlled the game as soon as he went off, that's when the game changed sort of back to Zebra when they sort of came back into the game. We lost the control, and I know it was a little bit negative, but I mean that's the game plan they were going out to play, and I think he executed it pretty well.
Yeah, yeah. I think from the outside looking in, if you're a neutral, you probably wouldn't have enjoyed the kind of box kicks. But like, I listened to the Scrum Five podcast earlier, and it was said that that was very much kind of the intention was to kick off 9 and kind of put them under pressure. And if you've got someone like Mason Grady on the wing chasing those kicks, it's it's a solid game plan really. And again, you look at the result, even though not the sexiest brand of rugby, bonus point, it worked. So got to be happy with that. Just interesting to see if we use that approach going forward, especially against certain teams. I think it would work, but there's other teams where it's probably going to be a bit of a disaster if we're just constantly kicking off 9. It'd be nice to see a little bit of variation, I think, against certain teams.
Yeah, completely agree with you. Grady going up in the lineup was always an interesting one. I don't know what that was about, but I was quite impressed with Southworth as well. I thought he looked pretty comfortable considering he hasn't played sort of that much rugby over the last couple of years. He slotted straight in, and I think the pack went pretty well.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think to get that more try as well, um, I think that's solid. That like we struggle so much with our line out, and I think going forward, someone like Southworth does seem a bit like the perfect Reece Carey replacement, and kind of the carries,
Yeah,
just the physicality, someone like that we need. And I think he's like 24. Correct me if I'm wrong, but
yeah, something like that.
got a bright future. Then 24 is still very young for a prop. So
Yeah,
if we
exactly.
can have someone solid like that when Domachowski isn't available, I assume he's injured or maybe they were just resting him. It'd be nice to kind of have that solid 3 choices again. Ed Byrne as well, Domachowski. You got Reece Barrett as well coming up through. It's quite a nice, level of players that no one's too far out of their depth there. And yeah,
Yeah,
Southgate's putting a shift is a good thing to rely on, really.
Yeah, and I watched the Cardiff was it Ebervale game, and that front row looked like they did look like they'd had regional experience, especially Evan Daniel. You could tell he was just a cut above everyone else.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
It's a bit of a shame that I would have probably liked to have seen Evan Daniel have a go on Friday night. I think Zebra would have again been a good game for him to play in, but if he can put in those shifts for the Rags, I think it's a matter of time till he's becoming a regular feature for the first team.
yeah, I agree. Gatland obviously likes the look of him, so
Yeah, yeah, definitely. That's no bad thing, is it?
no, exactly. We'll move on to the Scarlets before we talk about next week with the derby. Good result out in Treviso. Definitely a result that anyone involved in the club probably would have taken before, and I would have definitely taken that going over there. I think they only lost once at home last season to Glasgow, who obviously won the league, so I think that's a great result for the Scarlets.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think I was saying to my mum that they drew to Benetton, and she was kind of, oh, that's a bad result, kind of thinking of the Benetton of years gone by. But now they're such a solid outfit, and the kind of players the Scarlets had missing as well, and how Scarlets performed last season, that's a proper momentum booster. It's just a bit of a shame Cardiff have them up next because they're going to be firing, ready for Saturday. I'm not sure we're going to be so much in the same frame of mind on the back of that Zebra game.
Yeah, because I think they're going to take a lot of heart from that. I mean, realistically, they probably did deserve to win. When if you could even put it down to like one moment, was that Sam Wainwright when he tried to charge down the penalty. It's like a moment of complete madness, and in a game that's so close, that's enough to sort of tip the balance.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think what was huge for them was that Max Page try, well taken try for a man on debut, but to get that try just before half time, I think that's such a momentum booster because it would have been 12-0 at half time, and that'd be such a downer for them to go in 12-0, but to get that kind of try back meant that it was an open contest then.
Yeah, they definitely seemed like they had a bit more grit. Like last year, you think if they'd have gone those two scores down, they might have sort of folded a little bit. And they didn't. They just kept in there. And even when Zebra were coming back, I mean, they held them out for so long on the try line. It was a little bit heartbreaking for the players because they definitely probably deserved something a bit more than what they actually got. But I thought Johan Lloyd was actually impressive. I've said before in quite a few videos that I don't think he's an outside half, but I thought that was probably the most consistent game he's been in that position. All his nuts and bolts were pretty solid. His goal kicking was excellent. His general kick in for touch and stuff under the high ball, his defence, it was all really good. I still don't think he's got the ability to control a game and run the play consistently. But I mean, that was, in my opinion, the best he's been at outside half, especially since he's been back in Wales.
Yeah, and it's quite a big performance considering he wasn't originally penciled in to play 10 as well.
Exactly.
So to kind of pull that off is... I'm kind of conflicted as to what position he should be. I don't want another kind of James Hook situation where I think he's class. But they kind of need to make a decision now of is he just going to be second string to Costello? Obviously you got Blair Murray now as well, who kind of seems a little bit of a similar mould to him as well. So they're trying to produce these players who are just that they can interchange then each week and stick to the same game plan. I think there's a big call again. I think Johan's 23, so he's still got a number of years to kind of make a decision. But you don't want another 10 years of kind of a James Hook situation, do you?
Yeah, exactly. Like you say, he's still young, but now is the time he needs to settle down and then sort of nail it down for the next couple of years then.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
But on Blair Murray, I mean, we didn't get to see an awful lot of him. But I think that extra kicking option on the wing, because I think he's left-footed, and I think they could potentially use him like Ireland to use James Lowe quite a lot, and that extra option on the clearance and stuff.
Yeah, I think as well with a team like the Scarlets, obviously still don't know what it'll be like this season, but I think when you're a team who are struggling as much as they were last season, to have something like that in your arsenal to play like a kicking game and just kind of shove the ball down their throats, it just offers a different option if you're struggling. You can just do that, and I think Cardiff have the benefit of that with like Ben Thomas at 12. I can definitely see that going forward. You know, the state of Welsh rugby at the moment, we're not really going to be competing at the top. So if these teams can have something a bit extra to them, like not that Ireland needed any help anyway with someone like James Lowe, but it definitely gives them that other option where they can kind of get out of jail a bit easier.
Yeah. So heading into next week now into the derby, you're not sure? Are you on the fence or?
Yeah, no, a little bit on the fence. It probably different if it was at home, but I think because it's away, it's gonna be a tricky game. Like we've won there away plenty of times, but again, I think we're not the best team on the road. So I still, obviously my heart would be with Cardiff, but I think it's going to be a close game either way. How about yourself, Christian? What do you reckon?
To be honest, exactly the same. I'm not confident going down there. We've really struggled with them in the last few years, which makes me worry. It seems like they've got a little bit of a hoodoo over us at the moment. But I gotta back. I mean, you gotta back the boys and hope for the best.
Yeah, I went down a couple of years ago when it was after the Egggate kind of incident where we were kind of to the bare bones with some players and we just about scraped the win when they were just camped on our line for the last 10 minutes. And I won't be going to the game this weekend, but if we lose this weekend, I'll consider myself then just the lucky charm that was there.
Yeah, exactly. Then you'll have to go to every game. Yeah, well, it'll be a good game. I'm not a particular fan of having the derby so early in the year, but I guess that's just the way it's landed.
Yeah, especially with the Scarlets game is like 2 weeks after at home that don't really understand how you can have like two fixtures, the same reverse fixtures. It's much better when it's like Christmas time or just post New Year's. I enjoy it a lot more. People are home then. People are off work so they can actually travel and stuff.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's just the way it's landed, really, isn't it?
yeah, a bit annoying. But we'll move on to the other derby, which was obviously the Dragons and the Ospreys. How did the Ospreys lose that game?
I have to concede, I didn't watch the game. I was out Saturday during the day, but I have caught up on the highlights. And from what I've seen, like I saw it was quite an early try from Kieran Williams when I was just scrolling through Twitter. So kind of thought, that's the floodgates that are going to be open now. And then was told by a mate at full time that the Dragons had won. And one of my mates is actually a big Ospreys fan that was with us, so he wasn't too happy. But yeah, no, it seems Ospreys really struggled down in Rodney Parade.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it?
Especially Dragons have never really like looked that great against other teams in years gone by down in Rodney Parade, but it just seems to be the Ospreys. Dragons are just a bogey team for them. So to get that kind of win at the end, I bet the Dragon fans are bloody delighted.
Yeah. A lot of Dragon fans were calling it before the game, though. I did notice that they were very confident going into this one. And you can't say that about many games in recent times, but just something about the Ospreys don't like going down the M4 that far or something, I'm not sure.
No, of course not. Yeah, it seems we can never beat the Ospreys, but the Dragons can always beat them, and the Dragons can never beat Cardiff. So it's a nice little relationship there going on with all three teams.
Yeah.
But no,
It's all level.
Yeah, but no, look, happy for the Dragons fans because I don't know how the season's going to go for them, but that's a nice little momentum booster that if a team like that needs kind of momentum going forward. So if they can get, they got Leinster next away, so good luck to them there. But if they can put a shift in there, then they'll be positive after 2 rounds, really.
Yeah, it couldn't have really fallen much worse for him, to be honest, with that fixture, like you said. But I mean, if they go out there and keep it close and perform, I guess it gives like Di Flanagan a bit of something to, say, oh, we're looking, we're building, we're improving, we're better than where we were last year. I definitely think they are as well. A lot of young players. Joe Westwood had a bit of a stinker in that game, but I think he's definitely one for the future. It seems like the players they're bringing in are making an impact, which is all you can ask for, really. And obviously, a lot has been made of Tia taking over, and it's hard to paint a broad picture over just one game, but they did look like a bit more sort of aggressive, and just in everything they were doing, they looked like they just were doing it a little bit more intense than last season.
Yeah, I think it must have been a more bitter pill to swallow for Ospreys fans if that was all
True. I didn't think that.
Tia's blueprint. Then that'd have been even more kind of horrible for them to stomach. But yeah, if it is him that's kind of instigated that kind of more physical game, I heard Aaron Owen had a really good game as well, and
Yeah.
it's very positive for Wales overall. Then something like that, I think centre's a position that depth is definitely needed going forward, and yeah, definitely happy for the Dragons fans on that one.
Yeah, same. I mean, they need some, something to pick them up because they're loyal fans and they're not getting much back from the team at the moment. But hopefully this season will be a bit better for them anyway.
Yeah, I really do hope so.
Yeah. On that, stay on the Wales point with that one, with the centres, because that is something I wanted to speak to you about. Who do you think is like the outstanding ones? Because it seems like Gatland's got this idea of what he wants, but I feel like the game might be going in a slightly different way. Like Gatland is clearly wanting that big 12 who's just trucking it up, but it seems like the better 12s at the moment seem to be like the footballers, like Ben Thomas, that type of player. Even though he seems to think that Thomas is a 10, which I think he was more than capable of playing there. But if he's not going to play there week in, week out, it just makes no sense to me. And I would have liked to have seen him get an opportunity in Australia in that position. But is that more, do you think, of an indictment of where we are at 10 rather than him as a centre?
Yeah, it probably reflects where we are at 10 more than anything, and that no one's really kind of nailed that position down. But at the same time, I still think if he wants that big centre, I don't think playing Grady there is the answer. I think you've got players like, obviously Eddie James went on tour and only played against the Reds. I think he did come on against South Africa, but it would have been interesting to see him have a go at 12. He's big lump himself. And you've also got Max Llewellyn at Gloucester, who he was in that World Cup training squad, but hasn't really had a sniff since. And kind of the way he plays is a lot more reminiscent of a Jamie Roberts kind of crashing the ball. So I think if he wants to go down that route, I don't think Mason Grady is the option. But again, yeah, I do agree that kind of having a bit of a footballer at 12 would be a lot more beneficial, especially as we touched upon before, the kind of having that in your arsenal of teams are going to suss out very quickly if you've got like a Jamie Roberts type player, that if you just chuck a player to mark him, that your game plan's kind of out the window a bit.
Yeah.
And whereas like if you've got a footballer there's a bit more kind of to threaten them with. But it's just a case of if he's going to... I feel like it was a bit of a wasted opportunity that in Australia he used Grady at 12, because I don't think that was going to ever go anywhere. I think Grady's a great player, but
I agree.
do not think he's a 12 whatsoever. And so it was really a wasted opportunity. So I think in the autumn there needs to be kind of some sort of... And if he alternates the 12s, then that's not a bad thing. But he can't just stick with someone at 12 who's very clearly not a 12.
Mm. Yeah, I completely agree with you. And you always see with Grady, where he seems to ever sort of make spaces when he's working on the wider arc. So like it just doesn't make sense to me why he's trying to box him into this, like, and I think like certain players like Thomas and an Aaron Owen, players like that, they might not be the most natural ball carrier, but they seem to use like their footballing ability and like their vision to pick the gaps and the lines. They seem to like be able to find the holes better. Especially Thomas, the last couple of years, he's gone streets ahead with that sort of vision of where he's going to find the hole. And then Aaron Owen does that as well, really well. But I'm with you. I think Eddie James is probably the guy moving forward because he can just do everything. And like you said, I think it was a missed opportunity not giving him a chance in the summer to actually show if he can play at that level and fit that system, which I think he can.
Yeah, I think Hugh Griffin on Twitter once did a really good thread about how you kind of need that cohesion in the centres as well. That there's very rarely been examples of centres who've never played with each other that have then performed exceptionally on the international level. They need to run a games together.
Yeah.
And you could kind of argue that with like Jamie Roberts and Jonathan Davis were a formidable pair, but it wasn't like from the minute they started playing with each other. It was very much after a run of games. And I think if you look at something like that, like you can go for then Eddie James at 12 and Joe Roberts at 13, or something like Max Llewellyn at 12 and Mason Grady at 13. I think you kind of need that level of cohesion. And granted, like Nick Tompkins and George North were probably the exception to some degree, that they haven't had a huge amount of games together. But at the same time, you've got George North at that point who'd been playing international rugby for almost 15 years, and Nick Tompkins who'd won so many trophies with Saracens, that you had that experience there, which you just do not have anymore. You don't have players who are like as successful coming through at the moment, which is obviously a shame, but I think you need kind of some level of players who, and I'd argue it again the same time with like shuffling Owen Watkin from 12 to 13 multiple times, not kind of giving him an actual position, and then never playing with the same person at 12 if he was at 13, or never playing with the same 13 if he was at 12. It's always a different player he has outside him or inside him.
Yeah. And putting him at, I could understand why Gatton wanted to give Grady a bit of experience in the summer, having him outside him, but especially at international level, I just don't think you can get away with his pace in that position. And he's no slouch, don't get me wrong, but not to what that international standard is. It's just a little bit quicker, and I think he's so much better with his defensive reads and stuff at 12, where it's a lot more like in front of him rather than they're trying to get outside,
Yeah, definitely. I was kind of conflicted for years as to whether Watkin was a 12 or a 13, but I kind of thought that there was a bit more about him at 12. Like he offered more of a threat. And again, you kind of talk about a kind of football in 12, obviously not kind of in the same mould as Ben Thomas, but he's got that bit about him, that kind of deception, where he can kind of run round someone. I think there was all sorts of times where like he'd be at like 13 and Halahola would be at 12, and then like a few months later for Wales they'd be playing the same team swapped over. Same with like Nick Tompkins. It was kind of, they could never make their mind up. Granted, this was like under Pivot, so we're talking a long time ago now, but they could never make their mind up, and I think it really kind of wasted a number of years of kind of getting that centre partnership that could just take us forward for like the next 10 years. We had Jamie Roberts and Jonathan Davis for so many years putting in shifts each week that I think that's really the worry. That and the same goes for chopping and changing kind of the fly half, that you have a scrum half who's playing with a fly half he's not familiar with whatsoever. That it's not going to do us any favours. And then look at the other nations, they've had kind of settled players in the centres or in the half backs, and that's why there's no real worry. There's like an element of trust there that they know what each other are going to do. And I think, going forward, something needs to be decided. Granted, it's only the start of the World Cup cycle, but I do think something needs to kind of be done. Just make a judgment call, even if someone's not 100% settled in a position. Just give them that run of games to kind of get them there.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And like I say, even though we are at the beginning of that World Cup cycle, we're no closer after last year to narrowing it down as to who it's going to be, which is what is a bit of a worry. And like it goes back to it was a wasted opportunity this summer. Um, but it's difficult because we don't know who 10 is, and they chopped and changed scrum half quite a lot until Thomas made it impossible to drop him. So yeah, it's a tricky one, and I think Gatland needs to really this autumn now and this Six Nations, they need to proper hone in on what this starting 15 is not. I mean, everywhere we need to know now, because it's okay if you want to tinker and chop and change over a cycle, but you need these guys, like you say, to all bed in now and start to realize what the guy next to him is going to do, and where he's going to be and what his strengths are, and where you can complement each other. Because at the moment, it seems like every game there's like 3 or 4 different changes, and you just can't get anywhere like that.
No, not at all. And we're falling behind against the other nations as it is, like regardless of anything. And it seems the kind of decisions being made are just not helping anyone in any kind of way. And I see a lot on like Twitter, people kind of saying how disappointing it is that Wales aren't the same team that they were a few years ago, just for like the overall Six Nations. And I think like going back to like the fly half position, I think going forward you could see Anscombe may be the one who's given the kind of keys to the 10 role, but not sure how old he is now, but he's not really going to make the next World Cup, is he? And he's had all sorts of issues with injuries that, again, you could put him in there to kind of just have that experienced head to kind of give the other guys a chance, rather than playing someone like Ben Thomas at a 12 or 10. But what benefit is that going to have in the long run?
Yeah, I mean, in the long run, not necessarily, but I would do the same thing as you and go with Anscombe, because I feel like he can raise the players up around him. We need to, like we're saying, create this cohesion at centre if you're going to have young centres or an untested centre partnership. To have someone like Anscombe, I mean, we saw the difference he made in the World Cup when he came in. Was it against Australia? And he'd been out for so long, and he just came in and just completely run the show. And it was like, that's just the quality is a different level. With all due respect to Costello, like whenever he's been given an opportunity, and I really rate him, and I do think there's a good player in there, and I think he's just been caught up in this whole sort of mess that Welsh rugby has been. The Scarlets have been poor, Wales have been poor, and I think given enough time and enough quality and like just basically calmness around him, I think a good player is going to come out of him. It's just whether he's like too scarred from the last couple of years of what's happened, because I think he's come under a lot of flack, and not all of it is fair.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. I think it's probably a blessing in disguise that he went to the World Cup last year, because I know that Gatland didn't often pick more than 2 fly halves, but he did in 2023, and I think it meant that he had that experience that you kind of knew Anscombe and Biggar was retiring anyway, but Anscombe's not got many years to go, and especially with his injury issues. But again, I wonder like what sort of benefit would, at the moment at Gloucester, granted they didn't perform well at all last season, but you've got Thomas Williams at 9, Anscombe at 10. That could be a starting half-back partnership, and you could even then look at, you got Max Hewellen at 12. From what I've seen, they've linked quite well together already. So if you have that kind of cohesion again, and then someone like Costello coming on for the last 20 minutes, and you've got that kind of level-headedness from if they're in the lead or something, and even if they're not, it's kind of, that would probably benefit Costello in the long run. Again, I think that's kind of the way forward, and obviously it's easier said than done. But I think chucking Costello in the deep end right now with some of the flack he's gotten. But like we look at the Six Nations, I thought, as much as again I rate Johan Lloyd, you've got to look at Costello as being the man at 10 more so than Johan.
Yeah.
Anscombe's 33, just accuracy's sake. So yeah, I mean, he's never going to really make the next World Cup, but I don't know, he could be the steadying influence. And like you say, he's playing with Thomas Williams. They're already familiar with each other. And then Max Llewellyn, I mean, as long as he can stay fit, I would pick him straight away, no question. But you saw when Costello come off the bench in the summer, and like there was no pressure, he was really creative and he was dangerous and he was actually bringing players in, and that's like what he can do. It just seems like, I don't know whether it's just the pressure of the game plan that doesn't suit him or something, but maybe he's just more suited to coming off the bench for Wales. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think if you look at if you have then a rotation of Anscombe and Costello, they're two more similar players than, say, like a Biggar, when I think Biggar and Anscombe are kind of worlds apart in terms of the way they play. There's that kind of control the game element that they both can do quite well, but in terms of the style of play they had, whereas Anscombe and Costello were both like take the ball to the line and bring other players in a way that Biggar wouldn't. If you have that kind of same style of play, then going forward with Wales, it's almost interchangeable. You can just chuck Costello in with 20 minutes to go and ideally play the same style of play and not take your foot off the gas too much.
Yeah, and it's not that like upheaval with the guy at like 12 or 13 has now got to think, where is my running line's going to be because I'm playing with someone completely different. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. What do you fancy then for like the autumn? How many wins? No wins? One win? I'm putting you on the spot here.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if we... I think you've got to look at the Australian results in the Rugby Championship where they've been pretty poor, especially that... I say that, like, obviously they got back into the game against New Zealand, but that Argentina game, that was just insane that you kind of look at that and think, how did we lose to them in the summer? And I think the main problem Wales had in the summer was there was almost like too much respect for the Australians. Like, it seemed any time we'd come close to them, we'd just concede something straight away. And I think if there's an element of you can kind of pick the players, I think one would obviously be not have Grady at 12, probably not have Ben Thomas at 10, and you can then kind of pick a game plan from there. There could be a chance you could beat Australia. Again, with Fiji, they're quite a bogey team for whatever team they play, and we've had some battles with them over the years.
They've been on fire in that like Pacific Cup or whatever. I've just been watching the highlights and they're just routing everyone.
Yeah, and especially there's not really they've not got any of their they've not got many of their experienced players in that team. So once you bring them in the autumn, you've got 23 players who've just been playing consistently with each other, and then you can chuck in all the good players as well. They're going to be up for it in a way that Wales definitely won't be. But then,
it's a scary prospect.
Yeah. I would not fancy the likes of Tuasova, Randrandra, Bottia running down your channel. I'd be running straight down the tunnel if something like that was happening. I think that's the problem. Again, we've got such kind of inexperienced players that I'm not going to say they're not up for it, but how will their heads go if minute one of these big Fijians runs straight over them? It's going to kind of mess. I think confidence is one of the huge problems in Welsh Rugby at the moment.
Yeah, 100%.
We've rarely been, when we've been a confident team, when we had a run of wins, we can almost beat anyone on their day. But now, it's the amount of losses we've had on the run. I just think it's Australia first, Fiji second, and South Africa third, isn't it?
I believe it's Fiji first.
Oh, it's Fiji first. Ooh.
I think so. I'll check now.
God, that could be even worse.
Yeah, not a good start, is it? Let me check though. Don't take my... Yeah, it's Fiji first, and then Australia. Both on Sunday, annoyingly.
Yeah, no, I did see that. That's a bit disappointing. I think the whole kind of autumn runs on that Fiji game. Then, if we win, it could be that kind of momentum boost Wales need. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
if we lose, I can't see us then beating Australia. And I don't think we stand a chance against South Africa.
No, no, I can't see it, but you never know on the day.
Yeah, unless it's a team that Razzie Erasmus then just experiments with, and obviously there's kind of certain issues with. Obviously, there's been all that talk about Lebock, which I think is a bit unfair. With him missing a kick on Saturday against Argentina, but I think if they pick a really experimental team with new caps, then there might be that chance that it's two teams who are kind of equally inexperienced. But again, there's just something about South African players that they're just beasts. That
Yeah,
even in the URC, you see some of them that they've kind of just got this whole kind of conveyor belt of players who are just ready to take anyone's place that Wales severely lacks at the moment.
yeah. It's just the difference in depth is just it's incomprehensible. It's you're not competing with it. It's just the way the system is set up and
Yeah,
everything is perfect, really.
yeah,
And we're nowhere near that at the moment. But I'm hoping the new sort of board and the way they're trying to bring in sort of like new processes now. I'm really hoping that this is like a seed change, because I know they brought out those like goals a couple of months ago, and everyone was a bit like underwhelmed, or because they didn't really give us a plan of how they were going to do it. But I think they're trying to be a bit more transparent and trying to be a bit more like honest where we are. Whereas in previous times, it's just been like, no matter what's going on, everything's rosy in the garden, and we're having our hospitality, we're happy. Do you know what I mean? And I get the feeling it's a little bit different from that now. I'm hoping anyway.
yeah. It was interesting to read that in the Six Nations, obviously it's France first and then Italy second, and it would appear Wales are going to fly back to Cardiff rather than stay out in Europe, which they've done years gone by whenever they've been back to back.
Okay.
Which I don't think anyone was particularly complaining about something like that in terms of the transparency. I think it was more when the board were going out there with their whole families, so and not paying out of their own pocket. It was kind of the WRU money going towards that. But I saw as well that there's been a lot of skill sessions recently with the coaches where they've been getting in all the kind of players and under 20 and like kind of the players.
Yeah, I saw that. I like that.
Yeah. I think it's brilliant. I think like as well, more importantly, kind of for cohesion, it's great that these players who all play for different regions are now going to be meeting each other at 18. Granted, they'll play under 18s together, but that's not always the case. That you could be having 40 odd people going to these skill sessions. It means there's that cohesion going forward. That when say in 5, 6, 7 years, they're all in the squads together. They all know each other. They're all familiar with each other, and it's not a case of kind of someone getting a call up at 25 and walking into the Wales camp without knowing anyone other than their teammates. So I think going forward, that's definitely a positive. And with the lack of depth in Wales at the moment, it's kind of good to give those players that little hand up in a way that other nations kind of have that benefit with the amount of depth that, look at somewhere like Ireland. Like obviously they've got that emerging Ireland tour coming up soon. Wales could never ever feasibly do that. So to have something like that, I say never ever. It could be feasible in a few decades, but certainly never anytime soon. So to have something like those skill sessions is definitely a step.
Yeah, and it gets them familiar and comfortable. Just even if it's just in the environment of like going to the Vale, being around Gatland and the coaches. It just even that can make a player feel like more just like comfortable in his ability and thinking like I should be here. And when he then hopefully takes the step up, he's already comfortable because he's like, well, I've been here before. I've worked with these guys. I do deserve to be here, and it's not so like daunting.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I think like when I was in school, I went up to the Vale once to the Centre of Excellence and kind of being there. Like there were a few Cardiff players doing fitness tests. The Scarlets were there for some reason. Nigel Owens was there. It's kind of like an environment that, granted, I didn't make the next step myself, but I imagine you chuck a few kind of young academy players up there, they definitely kind of would have that appetite to be like, this is where I belong. And
Yeah.
I think the under 20s haven't been amazing, but I think it was our first season after COVID, they were particularly poor, and they've definitely improved since then. Granted, you have players like Morgan Morse who are just almost like single-handedly running through multiple players. That definitely helps. But like someone like him, I think he could transition seamlessly into. I wouldn't necessarily like start him or anything, but I think it'd be a great opportunity to have him in the squad for the autumn with no under 20 Six Nations. That's him to kind of get a feel of being in the Wales squad. I saw that like in years gone by, the All Blacks did that when Ardy Severe was 18. He toured with New Zealand to the UK, and this was like years before he even got his first cap. And then you've just got to look at the career he's had since then. That getting someone in that environment is perfect for kind of getting them to transition to international rugby.
Yeah, yeah, and you can see the fruits of the labour of the under 20s coming into the regions now. And although the budget cuts and everything like that, and the squads cutting down have been an issue, and it's obviously going to continue to be an issue for the next couple of years. The one bright spot of it is forcing them to give opportunities to these young guys. And like Max Page, perfect example on the weekend, he gets his opportunity because of an injury, and he takes it with both hands. And then everyone's going, well, this guy is obviously really good. Obviously, we don't want to pile too much pressure as one game, but you see Dan Edwards, he spent a lot of time in the under 20s, played a lot of games for them. And then once he got the opportunity to come into the Ospreys team, he was just hit the ground running straight away. He hasn't really taken much of a period to like acclimatise to the URC, I don't think.
Yeah, like you said, obviously budget cuts doesn't help, but I think a lot of these players who are now being given a go for the regions, it's almost like no one's questioning their place in those teams. I think someone like Max Page, it almost seemed like inevitable who's going to be given a go for the Scarlets, which I think is great because like years ago you'd have a player who'd been playing for the under 20s and he'd be given a go for the regions in a game, and you'd be like questioning whether he was ready or anything. I think because of the circumstances they're in, granted it's not a great position to be in, but it's almost like they have to do it. And you look at people like Cam Winnett, Mackenzie Martin, Alex Mann, they've just kind of had those run of games for Cardiff and then straight away got a call up for Wales. And when they've played, obviously Mackenzie Martin only made appearances off the bench, but people like Cam Winnett and Alex Mann, I thought when they played in the Six Nations, they did not look out of place at all. And that's so soon after being given making their debut for the regions. I think years ago you'd never have seen something like that. Granted, with the odd person like George North, who's just like an anomaly and like a genetic freak, that you kind of, it's a little bit easier to chuck a winger in, but to chuck like a blindside like Alex Mann is, and I thought he performed really well when he played in the Six Nations. So I think going forward,
I agree.
That'll definitely benefit Wales, kind of having that seamless transition now. I say seamless, it's probably not an easy process, but I think it'll benefit having more kind of younger players exposed to that environment rather than biding their time and then not making their regional debut until they're like 22, 23. They're kind of all going in young now, getting exposed to it. And that's what it's got to be at the end of the day. I think with Super Rugby Cymru as well will be good for kind of exposing players to more competitive games than they were used to.
Yeah, I completely agree. I just hope that we go. It all everyone buys into this SRC now, and it works as it's intended to work. Um, because if it can, then it's definitely going to be a big stepping stone to bridge that gap, and it's more like a seamless transition through. Then,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I recently watched a bit of the Curry Cup in South Africa, and it's kind of it's mental how the standard that is there for their essential semi-pro domestic league compared to the Welsh one. But if you have these more competitive games where it's less teams kind of focusing on better talent, Cardiff RC have just signed Josh Thomas from Newcastle. Granted, it's not like the most glamorous signing in the world, but you're having like a better standard of opposition then, better standard of players around you, that in a few years it's going to be a much more competitive league, especially when you got that transition of certain players just rotating between Cardiff RFC and the first team, and likewise with the other teams. And as we mentioned earlier, like Evan Daniel just looked too good in that game the other day, and I reckon in a few years now you'll have players who should be playing at a high level yet will be playing mediocrely in that league because it'll be so competitive. That's my hope.
yeah, that is the hope. I mean, you saw like Stefan Emmanuel in that Thursday game. Players like him who are still so young are going to be able to get an opportunity to play against other quality players who might be a little bit older than him, but that's where you can acclimatize to the next step now. I mean, how is he 18? That is ridiculous, like, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's a great approach by Cardiff as well that you've got with Stefan Emmanuel and Tom Bowen, that they went away for 2 years, and then the second that they left school, they snapped them up straight away. That kind of they weren't going to be in the situation where they were probably waiting another 3 or so years until their debut. Tom Bowen and both Stefan Emmanuel played in pre-season. That I think there could be this chance where, again, don't want to hype players up too much, but I don't think it will be too long until they're given a chance for the first team.
Yeah, and it's exactly what you say, and it's gonna entice these players to actually want to come back now because they, like you say, they know they're gonna get an opportunity. They might not want to sign for Gloucester and sit on the bench for 2 years. They know they can come and play, and they're gonna get an opportunity to play then at the regions if they perform. So
Yeah, and they're going to get exposed to kind of that potential Wales honours, and then if all goes well in 5 years or so, once they've got 25 caps, then they can go to England at that point. So it's kind of a win-win, I think, for everyone. Then you're a more established player then.
before we finish on something a bit fun, I just wanted to ask you, who would you pick if you were Gatland to be captain moving forward now?
I think it depends on injuries, of course, but I do think Jack Morgan is just such a kind of class act in terms of. I thought he handled captaincy really well in the World Cup, and obviously he's been injured pretty much ever since. But I think Jack Morgan should be the captain going forward, and I think there should definitely be that focus on like a leadership team again as well. And then if you've got the likes of Dewi Lake in there, that's even better. And I think that's the one thing that kind of this Wales team is so young that if you expose these players, just like when there was that kind of 2011 World Cup generation, you had Sam Warburton as captain. I've no doubt that kind of improved the team overall, that you had this young fella kind of telling them what to do, who was clearly very talented. And I think Jack Morgan is very much in the same mould. And I've got mutual friends with Jack who speak so highly of him as a person as well. And I think that's absolutely huge, having someone like that as captain. How about yourself?
Yeah, because you've got to be liked and respected by your teammates, otherwise it just falls on deaf ears. You've probably played in teams where you've got a captain or players who just talk for the sake of it and you just block it out. I would not have an issue with Jack Morgan at all. My choice would be Dewi Lake. I just feel he just speaks better. I know that sounds like such a stupid thing to say, but like it's especially in this modern era, that is a big part of the job. And I'm not saying that Jack Morgan can't handle that by any stretch, but I just feel like whenever you see Dewi Lake speak, he's just so natural at it, and he looks so comfortable. And I think he's not uncomfortable in that position, and I just don't think it would distract him at all from. I think he would just see it as another job. Whereas, like I said, I don't know him, and you obviously, like I said, you've got mutual friends. I feel like Jack Morgan, he's quite shy, and that might be more of like, oh, that's something I have to do, speak to the press. I don't really want to do it, sling as part of my responsibility. Whereas I feel like Derry Lake is just like, how do you do it? I mean, I could be completely wrong, but
No, I completely understand. I think there's an element of I wouldn't be disappointed if it was like Jack Morgan, Dewi Lake, or Dav Jenkins. I just think as long as it's like, again, that kind of focus on the leadership group, but as long as it's not given to someone kind of for the sake of it, rather than actually like looking to kind of create a leader, I think.
like Corey Hill.
Yeah. I was just we could probably talk about that all day. But that was a bit of a disaster. But I don't imagine that'll happen in a hurry anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Gatman trusted him, and everyone's allowed to have a second chance. But I just think it didn't land like he was expecting. I don't think, but just one of them things, I suppose. Is there anything else you want to talk about? I got a little bit of a fun thing to finish up, if you're happy to do it.
Yeah, no, I'm quite keen to go into this.
So we'll do the questions first. So what I've done, I've got 3 players. I'll do one at a time, and I've got 4 questions that all generally follow the same thing. So you have to basically try and guess as quick as you can from the questions who the player is. Okay.
Yeah.
So it'll be a Welsh international. So the first player, if you're ready. Okay, I was born in Swansea in 1995.
Oh, Adam Beard.
Good shout, not bad. No, in my Wales career, I've played fullback, wing, and centre.
Oh. Oof, 1995. I'm trying to think now. Nah, I'll move on to the next question.
I've played for a rugby club that no longer exists.
I should be getting this.
It's pretty tough.
Trying to think. I'll think out loud just to kind of try and process it. So I initially thought when you said a rugby club that doesn't exist, that could be Llanelli RFC. But then again, obviously you've got the kind of likes of London Irish, Wasps, and Worcester. So just trying to think of someone who's played fullback, wing, centre for either Wasps, Worcester, or London Irish. I wouldn't. Would Josh Adams have been born in Swansea? Is it Josh Adams?
It's Josh Adams, yeah.
Oh wow! I wouldn't have thought he was born in Swansea.
Good job.
Yeah, I didn't know until I actually did this. I don't know. I didn't realise that. Yeah, that was a good guess. Fair play. Good deducing. The last one was, you would have got it easy. It was, I finished the 2019 Rugby World Cup as top try scorer. You would have got that one. Okay, next one. So, I was born in Powys in 1981.
1981, Powys. Oof. Go someone like Ryan Jones.
No, good shout. When regional rugby came in, I joined the Ospreys.
Oof. So be 43 now.
Quick maths.
Born in Powys. Ospreys for regional rugby. Oof. It's a difficult one. Try and have a stab in the dark here. Actually, yeah, these are tough. These are really
Yeah,
tough.
sorry. Do you want the next question?
Yeah. Go for the next question. No, I prefer it to be tough.
I'm one of the very few players who've won 3 Grand Slams. I don't want to make it too easy for you because I don't want to just get them straight away.
3 Grand Slams. So that would be. Would it be Adam Jones?
Spot on. Well done. Yeah, good at these.
Wouldn't have thought. Again, I wouldn't have thought he was born in Paris.
Yeah, small village in Paris, apparently. The last one was I played 95 tests for Wales and 5 tests for the Lions. This one is hard, so this one was a bit more obscure, but I thought you'd get the other two pretty straightforward. So the last one was I was born in Pontypridd in 1977.
Okay. Is it 1977? So they'd be 47 now. Is it Martin Williams?
No, good shout though. I played over 70 times for Ponty, 70 times for Swansea, and 70 times for the Dragons.
Trying to think of who'd be 47 now that played for Wales. Trying to think of when they'd be playing. So probably in the 2000s. Played for Ponty, Swansea, and the Dragons. I'll probably pass on that one.
Okay. I played 48 times for Wales on the wing or fullback.
2000s. Oh, mine's just completely
That's
blank.
okay. It's a hard one. The last one, you should get off this one. In the famous words of Eddie Butler, I put the seal on the win and the cream on the Grand Slam cake in 2005 against Ireland.
Kevin Morgan.
Kevin Morgan.
I
don't feel like Kevin Morgan
gets the love that he deserves.
No, not at all. Yeah, I doubt that would have ever come to my mind with the other question.
Yeah, sorry.
No,
that was a tough one, to be fair.
So those are the guess the players. I have got a high or a low one if you want to do it, or you want to knock it on the head.
No, I'm happy to go for it.
Okay. So this is again internationals, and it's higher or lower international tries. Okay. So starting with Ian Evans, he's got 33. Next, Liam Williams.
Gotta be lower.
Lower. Do you want to have a stab at how many?
I'm trying to think, because obviously he's played wing his fair share, but then he's mainly a fullback. But he's probably had a good few kind of tries. Something like 24.
Not bad. 21. Okay, so next, Lee Halfpenny.
Oh, this is tough because he scored a lot of tries early on in his career when he was playing wing, but then he pretty much barely ever scored after
He was
that.
rapid when he first broke on the scene, wasn't he? And then he just got slower and slower over his career.
I remember he went something like 6 years without scoring a try, and he was playing almost every game. So by that logic, I'd have to go lower, but I don't think it's by much. It's either higher by a little bit or lower by a little bit. So I'll go lower.
It is lower, yeah. Don't I guess?
Something like 16.
14. Oh, close. Okay, next player is Colin Jarvis.
I know he's the most tries by a forward. I don't know if I think it's at least Wales might be in international rugby. So by that logic, I'd go higher.
Yeah.
I'd say something like 27.
22. Shanklin.
Again, he started on the wing, didn't he?
Yeah.
So that's a tough one. I'm gonna go lower.
Yeah, lower.
Something like 14.
20 he had. Not a bad record. That was more than I thought when I read it. Scored a lot when he first burst on the scene, didn't he? Like you said. Phillips next.
Oh God, he scored some good tries in the past. I'd go lower.
Lower, yeah.
Oh, okay, good. Something like 13.
9.
9. Wow, I thought it was a
That's
little
quite
bit more
surprising
than
there.
that. Yeah.
Because, like you say, there's a lot of like memorable tries you can think of his. There's only a couple left now. Bigger is next.
Oh, realistically, I feel like it should be lower, but I don't know. I feel like he's probably scored 10 or something in his career. Just trying to like go through it. I know he scored in the quarter-final in the World Cup. And I'll go lower.
It was lower, yeah.
Thank God for that.
Nice.
Something like 6, 7.
8 he actually scored. Feels like it should be more than that, doesn't it? Martin Williams, the legend that is.
Oh, this is going to be close as well, isn't it? Scored that try in 2008 in the Grand Slam win.
Yeah.
And scored 2 tries against France in 2005. I'm going to go higher.
It is higher, yeah.
Lovely stuff. Something like, is it 9?
It's 14, actually. It's not a bad return, is it? Toby Faletau.
Again, I feel like he hasn't scored too many, but he's played so many games. I'll go lower, but only by like a little bit.
Yeah, 12 he scored. So you're spot on. 2 left. Cuthbert, your mate.
That's got to be higher, surely, because he was just a try-scoring machine at one point.
Yeah.
Is this something like 16?
17.
Close.
And the last one is Rhys Williams.
Oh,
Throw it out somewhere.
I will go lower.
No, he was higher. Oh, the last one. He's 16.
16.
16, yeah.
16,
That was more than I was expecting, to be fair. Yeah, you did awesome then, mate. The only one you got was the last one. And that was tough on purpose. So.
Yeah, I was never getting that. I don't think. I think it was a bit before my time.
Yeah. I just thought, like, Cardiff fan, you might know. I don't know. But yeah, well, that's everything from me. Unless anything else you want to touch on while we're on you.
No, I think we covered
I
plenty, haven't
think
we?
yeah, we've been going for a while.
It's dark in my room now as well.
Yeah. Before we go, I just want to say thanks for you helped me a lot with my channel at the start. For just so anyone watching knows, I reached out to Andrew quite early on for my channel because I was like struggling with improving the videos. Without knowing you, I just like cold messaged you, and you like give me like loads of really good advice, and it helped me take my channel forward. So I just want to thank you for that. Thanks for taking the time because you could have just ignored it.
Nah, no problem at all. I always enjoy watching your videos when they're posted, and always enjoy our little dialogues with each other, and always appreciate your comments on videos as well. So cheers, Chris.
No worries. Thank you, mate. Thanks for coming on. It's been fun. Hopefully we'll do it again.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks, mate.
Yeah, thanks for
Have
having
a
me
good
on.
evening, all right?